Hi all, this is Erica, aka ECR Horses 1901, and today we're finishing up our small series on Breyer's non-horse molds by taking a look at their dogs, cats, and other companion animals. So let's jump in. First up is Basset Hound, introduced in 1966, sculpted by Chris Hess. This guy is not really my thing. This exact brown coat color was used from 1966 through 1968, and after a year off, he reappeared in 1969 as the tricolor Jolly Charlie Basset Hound. That run ended in 1985, and he was brought back for a final regular run from 1994 to 1995, this time with a small cushion. Also in 1995, he was a Breyerfest live auction lot as the Gold Charm Hound Dog, and he sold for $625, which was mid-tier as far as sale prices went that year. He was also brought back in 2016 as a 40-piece web special raffle named Dugan, who was a glossy black and tan version. Again, not for me, but I know this guy has his fans. Benji, introduced in 1977, sculpted by Chris Hess. Raise your hand if you remember Benji. He was technically a little before my time, but I do remember seeing his movie, and he was just kind of around when I was a kid. Benji essentially had two one-year regular runs in the late 1970s. In 1977 to 1978, he came as part of a set with his girlfriend, Tiffany, but in 1978 to 1979, he was packaged by himself. In 1977, he and Tiffany were also a JCPenney holiday catalog special. Now, Benji was always supposed to be just kind of a scruffy mutt of a dog, so the model is pretty accurate. I mean, you can see him here. Now, truth be told, I am more of a cat person than a dog person, except for a few specific breeds. So once more, this mold doesn't do a whole lot for me, but it is true to the character, so props for that. Boxer, introduced in 1954, sculpted by Edward M. Beam, and if that name sounds familiar, then you have been paying attention. According to Nancy Atkinson Young's Breyer Molds and Models, which we'll be referencing a couple of times today, the Boxer was Breyer's first non-horse mold, and I quote, "For he is the only such mold shown in the earliest known catalog, circa 1954, and the description of the model in that catalog calls him new." He has appeared in many different coat colors, including a wood grain from 1959 to 1965. The eyes on that model were something. And after his initial regular runs were over in the mid-70s, he reappeared from 1995 to 1996 as the Pug Boxer, who is described as chocolate brown with brindle striping. He was a Breyerfest live auction model once in 1999, a Breyerfest special run in 2003 named Duke, and was a 50-piece collector club online special in 2014. Apparently, if you ordered Glacier, remember him from the last video, you couldn't also order this guy whose name was Raleigh. So, who would you choose? Kitten, introduced in 1966, sculpted by Chris Hess. Okay, I said I was more of a cat person, and that is true, but this guy falls into the slightly cursed category. I think it's the overly large and round eyes. Not doing it for me. His initial run consisted of both this Siamese and a mislabeled calico kitten that is most definitely not what a calico looks like, from 1966 to the early 70s. Then he disappeared until 1994, when this mold was brought back, at least for a year, as Cleopatra and Leonardo. From 1995 to 1996, Breyer actually used this mold to portray Socks, who was the first cat during the Clinton presidency. In the year 2000, we got an actual calico named Patches, who appeared as a Breyerfest tent special, and in 2003, he was Tomfoolery, a holiday gift set, which reminds me a lot of Mischief, the holiday donkey from 2002. I will be looking for this guy for a decent price at Breyer Fest. Just throwing that out into the world. The last time this mold has been used thus far was in 2012 as a Collector Club Vault special run, this iridescent seal point tabby, which had less than 50 pieces. Lassie, introduced in 1956, sculpted by Chris Hess. Lassie was only presented as Lassie for about 10 years, after which time this mold disappeared until a brief one-year run as a honey collie from 1995 to 1996. In case you haven't noticed, we hear that as a date range that comes up a lot with these guys. Apparently there was a resurgence of these particular molds during that time frame. Otherwise, this mold has only reappeared 2 other times. Once in 2001, he was a 600-piece Breyer Fest tent special as a brown tricolor collie named Jester. Then in 2016, he was a 40-piece web special as this very nice red and white Maurice. He's a cute mold, but I would think that they would be more likely to reappear nowadays as a collecta-piece than as a Breyer model per se. And when I checked, they do have a couple of collecta border collies, but no regular type collies at this moment in time. Poodle, introduced in 1958, sculpted by Chris Hess, based on a Rosenthal China model by Professor Theodore Karner. This version of the poodle was used quite a lot and for a number of purposes from its start through the 60s. As a regular run, he appeared with a variety of both different coat and collar colors, including a wood grain, for several years. It was also used as part of a perfume set through Spiegel, if anyone out there remembers that company. I kind of do. I know my mom ordered from them. But was also used for a sewing kit in the 1957 Sears Christmas catalog, an aftermarket lamp, and possibly a bank. Alas, I think it's safe to say that this mold's run is probably over though, as the last time it was used was 1973. Rin Tin Tin, introduced in 1958, sculpted by Chris Hess. Not too much to say here. He was only used as Rin Tin Tin for the first decade of his run, similar to Lassie. After that, this mold has only been used from 1971 to 1973 as a regular German Shepherd, and that's been it as far as Breyer models ever since. Saint Bernard, introduced in 1972, sculpted by Chris Hess. Compared to the other dog molds, this one has been pretty popular. From 1972 to 1981, he was simply a straight-up Saint Bernard, but like a lot of other molds, he went away for a bit and then reappeared in 1995 to 1996 as Brandy Saint Bernard with a lighter brown coat and darker markings on her head. He's been at Breyer Fest special run twice. First was in 2010 as Beethoven, only about 20 years too late, but okay. A nice but pretty standard looking guy with a run of 600 pieces. The second time was 2019 with Bucky, who was a darker brown and white 730 piece run with a 30-piece iridescent blue and white variation. If you like St. Bernards, this mold is your guy. Small Poodle, introduced in 1997, but sculpted by Chris Hess. Maybe. I'm gonna have to sip some coffee before this one. In Nancy Atkinson Young's Breyer molds and models, there's a few paragraphs about this particular mold and its origins. And yes, I am going to read to you from this book, which, you know, again, this is not the first video I've mentioned this book in. If you are a Breyer enthusiast, you really ought to get your hands on a copy. I think I just found mine on Amazon. It was used, but I got one that's in really good condition, so I'll throw a link to one that I can find in the description. Anyway, here's what Nancy had to say about this matter. It's kinda long, but I think it's pretty interesting. In September 1996, collector Robert Bob Peterson wrote to me about a mysterious poodle dog he had acquired only a few weeks before from a man in Chicago who identified the dog as a Breyer that had never gone into production. The man was a retired independent sales representative who had represented Breyer for several years during the 1950s and had gotten the poodle along with a number of other Breyers during that time. She then goes on to list a number of particular Breyers, all datable to the 1950s. The dog is standing square like the usual Breyer poodle, but is a completely different mold. Smaller, sleeker, and more finely built, with mouth shut and face, neck, paws, midriff, and tail smoothly shaved. And we do have a picture of this model here, okay, so that's the one we're talking about. Her tail is broken, but originally ended in a round tuft, according to the former sales rep. So on and so forth. Like all other Breyers from the 1950s, she has no mold stamps. And then ... more info. When I spoke to the former sales rep on the phone in September 1996, he was certain that the dog was a Breyer. Although he had represented other toy companies besides Breyer, Breyer was the only one that produced plastic animals. He said that he had displayed this blue poodle for Breyer at a toy show in New York City one year. Okay, and there was that doesn't go anywhere. That's the end of the sentence. The rep did not know what specific decisions Breyer had made about the dog, but evidently they simply shelved it owing to lack of market interest. Nor did he know how many were made, or whether other samples like his had been given to other sales representatives. His own piece was the only one he knew of. Okay, and just for the interest of time, she then goes on to continue this story and saying how, about a year before her call with the sales rep, the editor of Just About Horses magazine had called her because she discovered an old inventory list for the company's injection molds and had found that there were 2 listings for poodles, one described as large, one described as small. Again, this was all about a year before Nancy's discussion with this guy who had this poodle mold. So at the time, Nancy Atkinson Young had no idea about this one's existence, and so she told the editor of Just About Horses, like, sorry, I don't know anything about this. When the editor went and actually looked at the molds, one was labeled small poodle and was the other poodle that we have already seen, and the one that was labeled large poodle was actually the same thing. So they appear to actually be all of the same mold. So after Nancy talked to the sales rep and learned about the existence of this particular poodle, she was like, oh, like having this conversation with the Just About Horses editor immediately popped to mind, and she called her and was just like, hey, is it possible you could have been wrong? I'm sure she worded it much more nicely, but like, is there any chance that you might have been mistaken about those 2 poodle molds being identical? And so the editor, who was Stephanie M., I cannot pronounce her last name, I'm sure that someone out there listening knows, but this editor, Stephanie M., was like, yeah, it's possible. So she promised that she would recheck as soon as she got the opportunity to. And here is where I will pick up the text again. A few weeks later, in February 1997, Stephanie called to say that she had had the molding equipment opened and found that the one labeled large poodle was in fact the injection mold for the usual poodle, and the one labeled small poodle was the mold for Bob Peterson's blue dog. So therefore, it does make sense that this particular poodle could have been sculpted by Chris Hess, but then not actually released until 1997. So for all that, this mold has never been used for a regular run, but has been used for a variety of Breyer Fest models. Now, I'm particularly fond of Cotton Candy, this kind of ridiculous bubblegum pink version who is a Breyer Fest 2009 special run with 600 pieces. Prior to that, this mold was used in more typical dog colors for a variety of raffle and live auctions in 1997, like the one that you've been seeing, the white one, and also a cream-colored poodle with blue collar and white gold bow in the year 2000 for a live auction, which sold for $925, which again was actually a mid-tier price for that particular year. And so that is the story of the small poodle. Then there is Tiffany, introduced in 1977, sculpted by Chris Hess. Again, I do remember watching Benji, but I do not really remember Tiffany or honestly pretty much anything else about that show or the movie. This model really only appeared with Benji from 1977 to 1978, so it was a very limited run. There is this gray and white test run out there, which also likely appeared in the 1970s. She's cute in a kind of early, derpy Breyer kind of way, so I have no beef with this dog. But just when you think that's all there is for dog and cat molds, nope. Breyer introduced an entire line of companion animals starting in 1999, until officially discontinuing them in 2006. Although, as we will see, some of these models continue to appear even to the present day in various playsets. First in this lineup is the Alpine Goat, introduced in 1999, sculpted by Kathleen Moody. He's had two short regular runs, first as this lovely tricolor from 1999 to 2002, and with a cream and white coat from 2002 to 2004. Australian Shepherd, introduced in 2000, sculpted by Cheryl Swink. He appeared with this standard coat coloring from 2000 to 2006. That's it. Beagle, introduced in either 1998 or 2003. Identifier Breyer has both dates, so I'm not really sure what's right. And unfortunately, the reference materials I have don't come up far enough in time, so I can't really verify. But anyway, this guy was sculpted by Sarah Rose. The Beagle mold has been used many times, often in playsets, and he can still be found today as part of the Pet Groomer set. Black Labrador, introduced in 1999, sculpted by Susan Carlton Sifton. Despite this mold's name, he's been used for a variety of differently colored Labradors, including yellow, although this is more of a Cheeto orange if you ask me. Hopefully it's just the lighting and this wasn't actually this fluorescent. Anyway, this was from 1999 to 2005, and there was also chocolate from 1999 to 2006. He last appeared as part of the ASPCA Benefit Animal Rescue gift set in a tan and white iteration from 2011 to 2013. Border Collie, introduced in 2000, sculpted by Cheryl Swink. The Border Collie has been used on 3 separate occasions. First as its own standalone model, which you see here from 2000 to 2006. Then from 2009 to 2017 as part of a tractor playset, and finally from 2011 through 2013 in Spirit of the West, along with a classic size cutting horse and cutting calf model. Calico Cat, aka Stretching Cat, introduced in 2000, sculpted by Kathleen Moody. Stretching Cat probably is the better description because this has been used for a bunch of cats, most of which are not calico. No surprise, this mold has been used also in a million different playsets, and is still available in orange tabby form as part of the Day at the Vet set, which was first released in 2018. Dalmatian, introduced in 2000, sculpted by Cheryl Swink. He's only had one regular run from 2000 to 2006. However, he's also appeared in the 2000 JCPenney holiday catalog as Lots of Spots, who is only slightly different from the regular run model. Then he was part of the Breyerfest silent auction lot, Bremen Town Musicians, in 2022, which is a very fun stack, very cute. Even if he doesn't appear as a Dalmatian, that's okay. Unfortunately, because this was a silent auction, we do not actually know what the selling price was. English Foxhound, introduced in 2001, sculpted by Cheryl Swink. This guy's been mentioned before on this channel as he's part of the Fox Hunting gift set along with a gem twist and the Fox model, but he's also been sold on his own from 2001 to 2005 and in one other set, Protocol and Friends with a strapless and a Shetland sheepdog, which was produced in 2019 only as a limited edition. Golden Retriever, introduced in 1999, sculpted by Sarah Rose. If this guy existed starting from 1989 instead of 1999, I bet there would be a lot more of him, just based on how popular this dog breed was just those few years earlier. Because as it stands now, he only appeared twice by himself from 1999 to 2006, and then fittingly, if again a bit late, as part of a popular dog gift set from 2004 to 2006, along with a Rottweiler. Great Dane, introduced in 2001, sculpted by Kitty Cantrell. From 2001 to 2002, he appeared with this brindle pattern, and from 2003 to 2006, he was given a more typical Great Dane fawn coloring. He was also in one of those popular dog two-piece gift sets with this interesting black and white pattern from 2004 to 2006. Again, I'm going to guess that the reason that we haven't seen the majority of these molds more recently, or any kind of like updates or anything like that, is because Breyer's Collecta line now covers dogs and cats and all sorts of other animals. And Collecta actually does have a Great Dane, at least that's supposed to be a Great Dane. I'll let you be the judge. Irish Setter, introduced in 2004, sculpted by Kitty Cantrell. This guy was by himself for a 2-year run in this traditional red coat, and also part of a popular dog two-piece series with a black lab from 2004 to 2006. Jack Russell Terrier, introduced in 1999, sculpted by Susan Carlton Sifton. This is one of those molds that keeps coming back in different playsets and has even been part of a couple of Breyerfest special runs. In 2001, he was part of a 650-piece special run with a Prancing Morgan stablemate, and both molds, as you can see, are flockies. In 2017, he was then part of a 750-piece store special, my voice, with a Shetland pony as the pair Dolly and Spanky. Miniature Sicilian Donkey, introduced in 2001, sculpted by Carol Hurden. I like this mold, but like most of the others, its run ended in 2006, and it wasn't used for anything more than that initial run. He's similar to the current Donkey stablemate, but I actually like the details on this guy a little bit more. Oh well. Owl, Sitting, and Owl, Waving. These were both part of the 2017 holiday horse, Winter Wonderland, which is a pretty good holiday horse in my opinion. I'll have to talk about that lineup another time. These owls haven't been used for anything since, and frankly, I'm willing to guess that they weren't really meant to be used for anything else. So they were on the list though, and that's why I'm telling you about them. Rottweiler, introduced in 2004, sculpted by Kitty Cantrell. We saw him before as part of the popular dog set with the Golden Retriever, and other than that, he had a singular run as well, both from 2004 to 2006. The models honestly look identical, so you get the idea. Shetland Sheepdog, introduced in 2001, sculpted by Sarah Rose. This guy has appeared quite often, and again, we've seen him before as part of the Protocol and Friends 2009 limited edition set. He was most recently seen in the Camping Adventure set with a bright golden coat, but that was discontinued in 2020. Silver Tabby, introduced in 1999, sculpted by Kathleen Moody. Like the previous cat mold, he's been used as many different cats, not just silver tabbies, obviously, because unless, again, the camera is totally off, this is not a silver tabby. We already saw him as part of the 2022 Breyerfest silent auction lot Bremen Town Musicians as a lovely little tabby here. He is still part of the also previously mentioned Pet Groomer set, which also contains the Beagle mold. Finally, we have the Welsh Corgi, introduced in 1999, sculpted by Susan Carlton Sifton. Yet another mold who has been around in some form pretty much since his creation, which makes sense given how popular corgis are with horse people, at least in my life experience. He was last seen in a set which ended in 2017, part of the Best of British series, in which he is paired with a classic-sized Shire A model. And this wraps up our series on all of Breyer's non-horse molds. As usual, I learned some things that I didn't know before, and hopefully you did too, or that it was at least a nice refresher of the many options that Breyer has presented us with over the years. Now, I'm not very sure what my next video is going to be, though I do have a few ideas bouncing around in my brain. I have a show on June 15th, which I'm still prepping for documentation-wise. This probably won't be my biggest show string ever, but I have amassed enough stablemates to actually make it worth showing, because that's actually the gimmick for this show. It's any model that is smaller than classic scale. So that should be fun. I've also been diligently working on creating and attempting to narrow down my final wish list for Breyer Fest, which is so much harder than it should be. So far, I know that I am selling one horse that I've already got one person slated to pick up, and I have bought a set of foals that I will be buying there. So I already have those somewhat lined up. Other than that, though, I am just going to let everything else that I'm purchasing just be a big ol' mystery until I'm there. As usual, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing if you haven't already. And your comments are always welcome. Take care, everyone, and I will see you next time.